It's your simon. Ooh. We're here to untangle. Freilich Chanukah to everybody, Yasher Koach to Rav David Lowy for bringing so much Torah into the shul. It's just such a whole new level, thank God. Koach should be all the aura of Chanukah should be on you and your family, Amir Hashem and Klal Yisrael. I'm going to go for my regular Tzidkas Hatzadik, Reb Tzadok, to speak about Chanukah because it's Chanukah. And I am focused in Reb Tzadok, but I can't produce a text right now because we're talking about Reb Tzadok in Tzidkas HaTzadik, Reb Tzadok in Pri Tzadik of Chanukah. We're talking about Reb Tzadok in Rasisei Loila. A very long part of Rasisei Loila has to do with Chanukah and the Yevonim in general and Torah Sheba'al Peh. More specifically, it was one of the themes of Reb Tzadok, and I'm going to try to, a little bit to what I've heard from my Rabbeim and a little bit of my own. Just as an introduction, the Chanukah story, of course, is in the time of the Bayis Sheni. It's all about the Bayis Sheni and the rise, the fall, the rise again, and then eventually the destruction of the Bayis Sheni. A period that was almost 500 years. And Pasuk says, Ki ner mitzvah v'torah or, one of the most famous psukim in the Tanakh. Ki ner mitzvah v'torah or. Maral names his Sefer on Chanukah Ner Mitzvah, appropriately. Ner Mitzvah V'Torah Or. So, let me explain that there's a big difference between the Bayis Rishon and the Bayis Sheni. There were many things that were in the Bayis Rishon that did not exist in the Bayis Sheni. By design, not just because we couldn't do it. One of the things that was missing was the Shechina. I don't know if that was by design, but the Shechina wasn't in the Bayis Sheni, at least in the same way as it was in the Bayis Rishon. But more specifically, in the actual design of the Bayis Sheni and the Bayis Rishon, probably the most important distinction is that the Bayis Rishon had an Aron. There was the Aron Abris. The Bayis Sheni did not have an Aron. It did have a menorah, and we'll learn that the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash and the Bayis Sheni took more importance than any of the other kelim. As the famous Ramban says in the Bahaloscha, that this is the future of Klal Yisrael, is this menorah. The future of our Kohen is this menorah of the Bayis Sheni and even the Chashmonaim, as we're going to learn. But an important distinction that the accent or the emphasis went, which is Tamuah, the emphasis went from Bayis Rishon to Bayis Sheni. It went from the Aron to the menorah. Aron is everything. Aron is the Torah. How do you even have a Beis HaMikdash without an Aron? But we did. In parentheses, Chaim Brisker speaks about this a lot, because he understands in the Rambam that the whole Kehillas Shivtei comes from the Aron. So if there's no Aron, in what lies the Kehillas Shivtei? The Chazal say on this point that there was no Aron in the Beis HaMikdash. Lashon of Chazal is that Seder Olam Rabbah, Lamed. Seder Olam Rabbah was a brisa written by Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. He says as follows: B'shna shem Malach Alexander Meis Malachi. When Alexander Muktan, Alexander the Great, Muktan means Macedonian. When Alexander Muktan came into the Beis HaMikdash, I'll explain the history of that in a moment. So at that time, Meis Malachi, if you look in the Seder Hadar, it's even more graphic. Malachi was the Navi, the last Navi. Agi Zechariah Malachi, he was the last Navi. And when Alexander the Great came into the Beis HaMikdash, he had almost like I would describe it as a heart attack, and he died. It's Alexander the Great doing it in the Beis HaMikdash, of the Navi. And he died. So the lashon of the Seder Rabbah is Kisher Nichnas B'shah Shemalach B'shana Shemalach Alexander Meis Malachi Ad Kan Misnavim. This is very important, the main thing I want to say today. Ad Kan Misnavim. Until the moment of Malachi, Chazal say Malachi was Ezra. Ezra's a Malachi, Malachi's a Ezra. Ad Kan Misnavim. Mikan va'elech. From this moment on, Hat Oznecha Ushma Divrei Chachomim. There was a paradigm shift that went from Nevuah to Lishmaya Divrei Chachomim. We all know this to be true. You know, interesting that, you know, everyone's always complaining that we don't learn Tanakh in yeshivas. So of course, we should learn Tanakh. Everybody should learn Tanakh. But there was a whole different emphasis now, because the Bayis Rishon was all about the Aron. The Bayis Sheni was all about the Menorah. The Bayis Rishon, or the Aron, was all about the Torah of Nevuah. What was in that Aron? What was in that Aron was that which Moshe Rabbeinu was Makabel Har Sinai, the ultimate Navi, and gave from Navi to Navi, Navi to Navi. Moshe Kibel Torah B'Siyad B'Asri L'Yeshua, Yeshua L'Skedim L'Neviim. It all came through us. Our Masara was all Neviim. And then Nevi'im, a new Masar there in the Mishnah, Nevi'im Sarua Ma'anshe Knesses Hagdoila, already talking about what we would call Chazal. So there was a paradigm shift that was, we have three things here. We have from the Aron to the Menorah, from Nevuah to Chachma, and to Lishmaya Divrei Chachamim. The Gemara says on this, the Gemara says it in two places. The Gemara says, the Chazal Darshan, Mi chamoicha bo'elim Hashem. Who's amongst you? Who's like you, Hashem? Ba'elim, in the big, strong, mighty powers of the world. Mi chamoicha bo'elim Hashem. Chazal say, Mi chamoicha be'ilmim Hashem. They make a drasha on this. Mi chamoicha be'ilmim Hashem. An ilim is someone who can't talk. How can we talk about Hashem? Amongst those that are quiet, you're the most quiet. Mazot Omeret. What it means to say is that Kiviyachol, Hashem stopped talking in the same way that he used to. To put it simply, until Shimon Hatzadik, until until Alexander the Great walked into the Beis HaMikdash, if Klal Yisrael needed guidance, we looked up. Basar Got. From now, Hat Aznecha Ushma Divrei Chachamim. We look down into the Sefer. We look down into the Gemara. We listen to what Chachamim have to say. This paradigm shift is a big difference. A difference between the emphasis of Nevuah and the emphasis of Chachamim. Whole different story. I want to point out, I'm using the language of the historians not because I'm a curse, but it's just the best way to explain it. But they say that there was the big difference between the Bayis Rishon and the Bayis Sheni is that the Bayis Rishon was prophet-centered. P-O-R-O-P-H-E-T. And the Bayesheni was Torah-centered. It's interesting that the Bayis Rishon was, let's take it a step further, temple-centered. The Bayesheni was Torah-centered, Chachamim-centered. There was a Beis HaMikdash. We want a Beis HaMikdash again. But it's interesting, historically, Ezra, for instance, Ezra Nehemiah built the whole Bayesheni. Ezra was a Kohen. And it would have been natural for him to be the Kohen Gadol. But he wasn't the Kohen Gadol. He was the chief prophet. He was the chief, and it eventually became the chief rabbi. Ezra tikelem liYisrael. Ezra did all the takolos. Ezra is the basis of all of Torah Shebaal Peh. Ezra himself switched with the Beis HaMikdash. This is going to be a different Beis HaMikdash. Habayis Hasheni Hazeh. This Beis HaMikdash is different than the Bayis Rishon. There's a lot to say about this in terms of the Kedusha. And Yadu, everyone likes to quote Rabbi Yaacov Haber on the Bayesheni did not have the same Kedusha. He makes it almost into a, wasn't real. Of course, of course it was real. We're Makriv Karbonos, so it has to be real. But what it means is that it had a different emphasis than the Bayis Rishon. I want to just learn with you for a minute the Ramchal, printed it out. Ramchal in the Klach. There's a country called Pischei Chachma, Kuf Lamches Pischei Chachma, and he has a country in there called Derech Eitz Chaim. So in the Derech Eitz Chaim, just so beautiful and clear how he explains everything. And he says, I'm just going to get to the main part of it, just because I had to read the whole thing. Al Torah Nemar, on the Torah it says, Yirmiyahu Chav Gimel, Halei Koi Dvorai Ko'esh Nu'um Hashem. My words are like fire. That's what Yirmiyahu said about Hashem's words. Torah. We have to view the Torah, says the Ramchal, as actual or. There's a lot of chachma, I add, in the world. There's no question in physics, the science, all the things that we benefit, medicine, all the things that we benefit from in this world, engineering, government status, all the different things that we live by, they're chachmas, but they're not or. Those are chachmas, legitimate chachma, but it's not or. Chachmas hanachris v'yedias hachol she'enon el yedias davar ma asher yasig aseichol b'tirchai. These are discoveries, intellectual discoveries, which come with a lot of work and a lot of development. But it's a matter of the seichel. I think anybody who has secular information would agree with this, right? This is intellectual, godless. Torah, but not to be confused with the Torah, because hina kodesh Hashem. There is kodesh. Not confuse the two things. We're talking about or, asher ta'ir b'nishmasai, a light. What is the Torah? A light that comes from above, from the Shemaim, and it goes not into the world, into my neshama, says the Ramchal. Or goes through my neshama. What's the vessel? Torah. So it's a whole different. Nobody in the world of physics talks about a light coming and shining up my soul. It's a different thing. A gift from Hashem. All the benefits that we have from the world of, let's call it, science. But it's not Torah. Torah is or. Kiner mitzvah, v'Torah or. Kashayasik bo ha'adam lamata or hi asher Torah b'nishmasai. Lahagi al ginzei meraimim. If one learns Torah, and we learned in Reb Tzadok, if you recall, that this only refers to Torah lishma. No lights go off necessarily when you just read a little bit of Torah. Nice, yafeh, shelo lishma, ba lishma. But the lishma of it actually lights up my soul. Or, little bit more. Torah or, when the pasuk says, Mishlei, Shlomo HaMelech said, Torah or mamish, v'loi chachma levad, v'loi shemara or b'derech dimyon. It's not like a metaphor to light, elo or mamish. How much can he emphasize this? We're not talking about like light, and I feel enlightened. You know, everyone feels enlightened these days. This is like a goal. We're talking about light, actual or. Why is it actual light? The answer is because the Torah in Shamayim is or. The first manifestation of Torah as Hashem created it, when it's up to the highest world that we can possibly grasp a little bit, is talking about in Atzilus, Torah is or. That's what it means when it says Torah or. Be konsab in neshama, as it enters the neshama, yikanes or ba kasher yikanes nitzutz hashemesh ve'echad habatan. You see the sun coming into the window. That's not a metaphor. That's or. That's what happens to our neshama when we learn Torah. So says the Ramchal. Afgam zois. Afgam zois. Seichel Adam nimshel eish, and now let's get the metaphor. The Seichel Adam is a flame, eish. V'ashva meduktakas, it's so meduktak. Ner mitzvah or Torah. Hikasher tira, I love this. Hikasher tira hagachalas. If you would look at a coal, a burning coal, an amber, she'ena meluva, no flames. It's not active kilu. Hashel heves hi b'toicha kamusa usagur. Where is the flame? It's hidden inside of it. Asher ha'afiach ba, you need only to blow on it. As tispashet v'tislayev v'teitze b'yisracheves v'hoileches. You blow on the coal, you see flame. The flame is on the inside. Somehow or another, it's hidden on the inside. This is, by the way, the whole deep shot in the medrash of Moshe Rabbeinu touching the coal and putting it in his mouth and becoming a Rosh Vasai. This is what it means. When you blow on that coal, as tispashet v'tislai v'teitze misracheves v'hoileches, all of a sudden you're on fire. Ubishalheves hahi, and when you look at the flame that's coming out of a coal, Nirim, says the Ramchal, you'll see kama v'chol minei gavonim, all the colors. Or colors. Colors come from the sun, from the filters of the sun. What are colors doing over here? You didn't see any color when you looked at a coal. You'll see a little gray, amber. Same thing as with Torah. The words of the Torah is a kol. But if you give oxygen, if you blow on that coal, which is Torah, this is the nimshal, Kain kasher, hein lo yirukim gacholim, when you just look at Torah, you see coals. You don't realize how hot this stuff is. You don't realize the flame that can come out of it. Gam kimata mumois. It's almost not there. It looks like it's, you walk away from a barbecue, like, are you sure, is it out? Are you sure? Don't cause a forest fire. Of course, you can't even know. Then you pour water on it and right, it was hot. So the coal in itself, in Riyah, is not flaming. But once you try to learn Torah, az titlahev, it will turn into a flame. Mikol oish shall heves gedola. Every letter will give you a different color flame. Memula bekama gafonim, many colors. Hein hayidiyas haim desfunos etoichais hahi. So, what you have when you're looking at a flame that's coming from a coal, or more important, when you're looking at a fire which is coming from our neshama, which is being ignited with the Or HaTorah, which is Torah's highest level of manifestation, is Or Torah Or, coming into my neshama, what you have here is a tapestry of colors that are a wall woven together in a flame. A tapestry of colors woven together in a flame. Like my parochas. It's exactly what it is. A tapestry of colors woven together in a flame. There's a lot of Ramchal. I recommend it to everybody. I want to say one more introduction, and then in the last 5 minutes I'll give the shiur. The Mishnah and Midos talks about the Harabayis. I just saw this morning, this Art Scroll 1 pictures and everything of the Harabayis talking about the Bayis Sheni. Masechet Midos talks about the Bayis Sheni. And it says here that Harabayis hayachamesh me'ezama, achamesh me'ezama baruch Hashem. You can see this, at least from the outside today. See the Harabayis, it's 500 amos by 500 amos. It describes Rubai min Adarim. It wasn't exactly a square, the Harabayis. Part of it, the south was bigger, the east was smaller, and according to the size of the different parts of the Harabayis, that's how it was used more and more. That's what the Mishnah says. And then the Mishnah says, there was a wall around the Harabayis, lifnim mimenu soireg. And there was an inner wall after you went into the Harabayis called the soreg. It's interesting that the Mefarshim all describe at great length what's a soreg, what does it mean, what does the word mean. But we all know, kibbas ruga, we know what soreg means. The soreg means that it's a woven together material. In this case, it was wood. There's a woven together, and the idea was, they could have put solid pieces of tree there. They know how to make wood, but they didn't. The inner wall was a soreg. Why was it a soreg? Why didn't they make it into a wall? Why didn't they make it out of stones, like so much of the Harabayis is made out of stones? Why put a wall? Make a wall. What's up with the bamboo, the wooden thing over here? The lattice. It was lattice. Is that the right word? Lattice work that was going on. And the answer to this, I just digress for a moment. The answer was because the soreg, what was its purpose? Its purpose was that when non-Jews from all over the world came to see the Beis HaMikdash, they went into the tourists and maybe Mavakshei Hashem. They went into the Beis HaMikdash. They were able to walk around. They were able to look around until the soreg. Once they got to the soreg, for the Bayis Sheni we were masaking, not Nachri is allowed to go past the soreg, but I want to see. So they made it woven. They made it into a lattice. You can see. Don't think they had glass. What were they supposed to do? All right. What else did they do? Just lattice. So it was like windows, Kilu, but it was a wall, was not a wall. So important for us. It was a wall that was not a wall. That was the soreg. Says the Mishnah, Midos Perek Beis, Lifnim mimenu soreg, gavoa asar tzvachim, like this table. That's how big the soreg was, so it was easy to see over it, and it was easy to see through it. You could see every angle. Ushloisha esrei protzais hayusham. Talking about the time of the Mishnahs, Rabbi Yehuda Adasi describing, there were 13 breaches in the soreg, shepartzu malchei Yavan, that the Greeks went in. Right? We all know this story because Yevanim nikbetzu alai, right? Ufartzu chaymois migdalai, right? That's the fartzu chaymois migdalai. That's what we're talking about. Tibu kol hashmanim. Makara, the Greeks, who we'll talk about in a minute, did not like this soreg. The Greeks, who were these Greeks, is an interesting question. But the Greeks, at some point, said, this is not a thing that we should not have access. This is not Beseder, that we should not have access to the full Harabayis, just like every Jew. What's the difference? What's the difference? Ufartzu, and they made 13 construction. This was construction. They made 13 entries into the inner Harabayis, which the Mishnah continues to describe. 13, the Rama Mipano, I just saw here in the art scroll, the Rama Mipano says there was 13 Keneged, the Yudbei Shivtei Yisrael, including Ephraim and Menashe. So, why did they do that? Why did they do that? I wonder. They're the ones who want to enter. Make the Jews feel like they're doing it for them. Here you go. Every Shevet could go differently. It's very nice. I don't know who knew what Shevet they were from exactly, but they made it a symbolic thing. They turned it into a beautiful symbolic thing of 13 Shepartzu Malchi Yavan. Chazru Ugedarum. Who did that? Chashmonaim. Comes Chanukah. Chazru Ugedarum. They made a geder where the soreg was. The Kehillas Shivtei, which you don't have here, says that if you what they did here, Kehillas Shivtei, he said what they did here is they fixed the breaches and they put back the soreg. And he even goes so far as to say, and if you'll see a picture that the matpisim, that the printers make of the Bayesheni, you'll see that there were 13 protzais. That's not true. Chazru v'gadrum. There were not 13 protzais. They fixed them. So there's no trace of this. All the other Mefarshei Mishnah say, no. The 13 protzais remained. They stayed there until the Churban Beis Hamikdash. They were there. These 13 doorways. Vigadrum, but they made a geder. So here you had this lattice work. I want you to picture this. They had this lattice work going around the whole Har HaBayis, and the 13 places, Asher Parshu HaYevonim, which the Yevonim broke through, they put, like, if anybody, for some reason at all, was ever, let's say, in a movie theater, so like they have these velvet ropes, like barriers at the airport. You don't have to go all the way to the movies. Just go to the airport. There's this velvet rope, which is they're moving here, they're moving there, changing the lines. So I imagine that was a geder. In other words, so these 13 pirtzais. And by the way, I think I'm not weighing in on the Kehillas Shivtei and the Rishonim, but that's the Pashut of Pshat. The Pashut of Pshat is that they didn't fix the 13. They could have fixed the 13. Hashmonaim knew how to make lattice work, but they did not fix the 13. Chazru Gedarum. And then, it's kind of refers in the Mishnah, V'gazru Kenegdom Shloisha Sreish Dachavayis. Wow, what a davar tamuah this is. Halacha that we can no longer keep. Went into the Har HaBayis. There was 13. A person walks into the Har HaBayis, you and me, walk into the Har HaBayis, and you see this soreg with 13 breaks with a little gutter, ad kan, don't go any further. And every time you pass, says the Mishnah, one of these gedarim, or gedaros as he calls them, every time you pass one of these little gates, and you look into it, you have to do a full hishtachavoyu. It means you get down, not like that. You have to get down pishut yadayim v'raglayim 13 times. I'm saying going to the Beis Hamikdash. This was an aerobic exercise. You have to go into the Beis Hamikdash. You don't have to. The Tosh Yontiv says go to all 13. But whenever you pass one of these gedarim, where there was once a pirza, a complete pirza, now it's a semi-pirza, from the Yevonim to the Chashmonaim, you do complete pishut yadayim v'raglayim. Hava Amina that the reason you do it is because you can have a better view of the inner chambers of the Beis Hamikdash. That's why you do pishut yadayim v'raglayim. But the Mefarshim say no. This is so much more symbolic than that. It was exactly where the pirza of the Yevonim came. That's where we're going to, at this point, make the point of being mishtachava HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The pishut yadayim v'raglayim. You would come into this area of the Beis Hamikdash, you would see, and you will see, hundreds, if not thousands of people on the floor, Jews, that is, b'pishut yadayim v'raglayim, at the makom exactly that the Greeks marked, l'kavod the Yud Beis or Yud Gimel Shivtei Yeshurun. Aflo v'vela. It's all very, very deep and symbolic, even in the most pashut of Pshat. Let me review of history. I'm not here to tell the Chanukah story. but a little bit of the Chanukah story, which as children we don't understand. Let's go back over what we said, 5 minutes, just understand what was going on at that time. We said there was after Purim came Chanukah. So Purim, the Malach Bekipa, the Melech HaOlam, the most powerful person in the world was Achashverosh. After him, Daryavesh, who was Esther's son. And that was the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was fought by the Macedonians and it was okay until Alexander the Great came of age, young, 15, 16 years old, and he was a warrior and a genius, and he was able to beat the Persians. There was a downfall of the Persian Empire going into what we call the Greek Empire. This is an extremely important, it's a very Jewish thing. I mean, like I have a son, Alexander. It's ultimately named for him. A Greek. Was a guy, obviously a guy. Not only as a guy, but his mother, if you read the history books, his mother was like a superstar, a machashefa. She was a diviner with snakes, and she made Alexander the Great sleep with a poisonous snake every night. That's what the historians say. I guess that'll toughen you up a little. Yeah. Sleeping with a poisonous snake. Something very, very interesting here. Wealthy people, they send Alexander the Great to learn by Aristotle. So Aristotle, who's also like Lahavdil from the Rishonim in Yiddishkeit, the Rambam, or Vukam is written as a peerage of Aristotle. So Aristotle was not just a guy like some Greek. He was the school of philosophy. Aristotle, just to get that historically clear, Aristotle was a student of Plato, also very strongly mentioned in Chazal, Yifal Ton. Plato was a contemporary of Yirmiyahu HaNavi. Look what's going on here. Yirmiyahu HaNavi was looking up. Plato was looking down. You see what happened? There's Nevuah. Yirmiyahu HaNavi is taking his directions from Hashem directly. Whereas Plato is on the other side. They met according to Chazal. It's like Gespart. They argued a little bit, but apparently they even met. Chazal describe a meeting between Plato and Yirmiyahu, and where Yirmiyahu was dealing with Nevuah, God's wisdom. Plato was working with Chachma. Both good. Yirmiyahu oversaw, if you will, the Chorban Bayis Rishon. Ezra, Nehemiah oversaw Mordechai, Esther, but oversaw Esther. If not for Esther Hamalka, there wouldn't have been a Bayis Sheni, because Esther Hamalka told Daryavesh, let the Jews build the Bayis. Persians would have let, they were still in charge. They would have never let anybody, why would they let Jews go to the Har Bayis and build the Bayis? It was because Esther, okay, don't mess with her. So the Persians went, as I stated in Tosfos, that they went with Esther's instructions. So probably the whole, possibly the most important part of the whole Purim story is that we built the Beis HaMikdash. The whole Bayis Sheni was because of Esther. That might be like the key to the whole thing, besides for a pogrom in Shushan. I mean, it changed all. It brought us back to Eretz Yisrael. That was the Bayis Sheni was Esther. Okay, so we built the Beis HaMikdash. So now Plato, Talmud Muvak, Aristotle, who, like in Lahavdil, our world, had Yish schools and Talmidim, and only for the rich and famous, they went to him, and you had to be a certain level of intelligence to get in. Probably you had to have yichus and a lot of protection to get into the Beis Medrash Aristo. And that was the makar of Chachma as we know it. Aristotle was the makar of all the source. Of course, it was developed by philosopher after philosopher. A philosopher was the same as a mathematician in those days. It wasn't like, which department are you in the university? It was one department. And mathematicians made the best philosophers, obviously, because they saw an MS, but all of science and all of math and all of parliamentary procedure and all of physics and all of astronomy. And Chazal knew a lot of these things, but when we say Chazal, don't forget we're talking about after this period. I'm not talking about before this period. Things went, it was very interesting things. Things went from Choseh b'Koichavim to astronomy. Went from astrology to astronomy. Yes? Things went from Alexander the Great's mother, Kishuf, to Chachma. Before the Rosh of Chachma before the time of Aristotle was Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was all about Kishuf and Chartumim, and every time the Navi Moshe Rabbeinu would say something, our Chartumim could say the same thing. We have our magicians, we have our prophets, we have what's going on? They're looking up, they're looking down, but they were not looking. It wasn't Chachma yet. Our Rizal describes this Kishuf, which we don't see so much nowadays, I don't think. But the Rizal describes this Kishuf as the klipa of Nevuah. So you have Nevuah. Hashem's talking to us through, like the Ramchal says, this or, which we could not only imagine, and we could absorb this or. This is a very important thing. You could absorb or Torah. You just have to learn and meditate on what you're doing. The klipa of Nevuah is Kishuf. The klipa of Chachma is Yavan. Aristotle. Plato, Aristotle, Alexander the Great. Dover v'klipasei. Everybody with me? So, I know there's a lot of Kabbalah here, so Aleph base. Right? A klipa is very powerful. It's a very powerful. So there's a subtle machlekes I want to mention between Rav Tzadok and the Ramchal, I think, machlekes. The Ramchal writes in two places that when Alexander, based on the Seder Olam, when Alexander the Great walked into Beis HaMikdash, Chachma took over the world. In other words, Alexander the Great was makabel from Alexander Muktan, more comfortable to call him Alexander Muktan. He was makabel Chachmas Aristo, Chachmas Plato, and he transitioned Klal Yisrael to a place of Chachma. Until now, listen to the Nevuah. From now on, hat oznecha ushma divrei chachamim. Chachamim, Chachma. By the way, you look at the first three Mishnahs of Kehillat, it was all about Chachma. This was right after the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. Open up your house to Chachamim. Listen to Chachamim. Tzavik ba'afer ragleim Chachamim. It's all about Chachma. Rav Tzadok's subtle vart here is, I feel a student of Rav Tzadok, is that's not the way it worked. The way it worked is that the paradigm shift of Chachma came, and Yavan was makabel together with us, because whenever Klal Yisrael is makabel something from Shemayim, a new gift from Shemayim, it also goes to the nations of the world. So it's not that Alexander the Great introduced the Chachamim. These are Chachamim. These are the Tzaddik. Not that he Shivra Tzaddik was Mishurik, introduced them to Chachma. Of course there was Chachma. Chachma was flowing from Shemayim through the Or, just a different type of Chachma. It was a Bayis Sheni Chachma, not a Bayis Rishon Chachma. It was a Menorah Chachma, which is the symbol of Torah, Shebal Peh and Chinuch. Went from a Bayis Rishon Chachma of the Aron to a Bayis Sheni Chachma of the menorah. This is something that happened, and this are so have a nice little machlekes. What the cause and effect? Was it that the Chachamim brought down Chachma in the time of the Bayis Sheni, and Alexander and Aristo chopped a piece of it, or is it the pshat that somehow, like the Ramchal actually says, that somehow they introduced Chachma? It all comes from Noach of Yafta Likim Liyefes V'Yishkoin Ba'al Leishem. And there Chazal make this beautiful drasha Noach came out and he says, "You're Yafes, beauty. You're going to have beautiful things, architecture and structure of things and systems, and that's all Yafta Lakim Liyafes." Yofi refers to the Yofi of the world. When you look at architectural systems, when you look at mathematical systems, when you look at government systems, and before they get too political, when you look at everything that that Greek wisdom, if you will, uncovered, that's all Yefes. It's all Noach's bracha. It's Yefes, Yafta Lakim Liyafes. When you start talking about Torah, it's not Torah, you're talking about shame. Yishkoin Ba'alei Shem. What's Chazal's beautiful drasha? A Mosa Yaf Yavusa Shel Yafes Kashi Yishkoin Ba'alei Shem. That we want to get these two guys together. But there's no point in having Yaf Yavusa Shel Yafes, which is Chesonius, if it's not the Chesonius of something. It's not a Chesonius if it doesn't have a Pneumius. So it seems what Chazal were looking at over here, and there's so much to say about this, was that the Yefesh should be there, but until the Soreg. Adkan. At the Soreg, they didn't want that. You want to take over the whole thing. You want to take over the whole thing, they knock down the Soreg. Let's make Tzachim. They're not too dignified to knock down the whole wall. Like the 13 nice little, Shar Ruvain, Shar Levi, very nice. But they basically broke the barrier between Klal Yisrael and Jews and between Chachma and Nevuah. It's all Chachma. There's nothing else. Now here's the story you all know. Let me just review because it's important. The story that you know is that the Gemara says that there was a group of Kusim. Kusim is a catch-all word in Chazal, which can mean different generations meant different things. It could mean Shomranim, it could mean Tzedukim, it could mean Kusim is a word for the censor. Kusim, Kuthians, it could have been anybody. But who they were at this time were Sumerians, was probably the closest place to put them. When we built the Bayis Sheni, Ezra and Nehemiah, when we built the Bayis Sheni in Yerushalayim and Har HaBayis, they were upset. What are the Jews doing on Har HaBayis, right? Anything new today? What were the Jews doing on Har HaBayis? Unbelievable. This has been since Yaakov Avinu, this has been the Yaakov and Esau, this has been the Machlekes, who's on the Har HaBayis. Ad Hayom Hazeh, Al-Aqsa. They said they had connections with the Greeks, these Kusim, connection with the Greeks, and they got the message to Alexander the Great that the whole Jewish thing in Israel is completely wrong. It's completely wrong. You must stop the Jews from taking over the Har HaBayis, and if there's supposed to be a Beis HaMikdash, that Beis HaMikdash should not be on Har HaBayis. The Beis HaMikdash should be on Har Grizim. Yom Har Grizim Haya. They were celebrating Har Grizim. That's where the Jewish people, they were Jews. That's where the Jewish people came into Eretz Yisrael. That's where blessing comes down in Eretz Yisrael, Har Grizim, the green mountain of Har Grizim. That's where it should be. Apparently, Alexander the Great, according to our history in the case, came in to check it out. And at that time, the Anshe Knesset Agdolah was just ending. Whatever the Anshe Knesset Agdolah was a period of 100 years or so. So it was a period, Anshe Knesset a period, like Tanoim, Amiroim was a period. Anshe Knesset Agdolah, Shimon Hatzadik Haya Mishiyore Knesset Agdolah, he was a Kohen Gadol, and he was told that maybe you could do something to fight for the Beis HaMikdash and the Har HaBayis, because Alexander the Great, who's the world leader, the world power, superpower of the world, wants to come take it away. He went, this is little research will show you, that Alexander the Great didn't come to Yerushalayim, even according to our sources. The Goyim have a suffix whether he Bechal came to Israel. He came to Israel, it's already Chazal. But when he came to Israel, who knows exactly, like where every step that he walked. But when he came to Israel, he went to Antipatris. Antipatris is still a place, by the way. That wasn't around. There was no Antipatris. It's a Roman word, Antipatris. Patros was Hurdas' father, who Hurdas killed, and Patros was also Hordus' son, named after his father, who Hordus killed. And then the Michigan named a city after him. Maybe Antipatris. It's like antipasta, It's like that. So Antipatris, but that was I think what we would call today Kfar Saba, that area. Ranana, that type of a place. Shimon HaTzadik got word, Chazal, that Alexander Mukdan is passing through Israel, and he says, I need to go speak to him about saving the Har Bayis. He came for the celebration, by the way, of Har Gerizim. Understand this, put it in your modern day context and understand. He came for the celebration of Har Gerizim. So he made a tekes out of Shimon HaTzadik. He took, say over there, 300 Pirchei Kahuna with him, and all kinds of people singing and musical instrumentation and Talmidei Chachamim. And this was an entourage that came to see Alexander Mukdan. It wasn't just, it was a choir, it was the whole thing to come see Alexander the Great. And as they were coming to see, he was going from Yerushalayim to Antipatris, and Alexander the Great, who are these people, coming the other way. You could see in the storybooks little pictures of people, but it was probably much more complex than this great summit meeting that who knows if it would take place or wouldn't take place, or if Shimon HaTzadik would even get to see Alexander the Great. Who knows? And when they finally came, kind of nose to nose, so this is part is Yadua in Sipurei Chazal, that Alexander the Great fell on his face and he bowed down to Shimon HaTzadik. And so, Melech Gadol Kamoicha Ma'ato Mishtachav L'Kohen Hedyard. That was the words that they used. So Alexander the Great talked about, this man always comes to me in a dream. He's a holy man. What holy? I'm an Aristotelian. There's something here. And they met, and to make a long story short, they saved the Beis HaMikdash. Alexander the Great then came to Yerushalayim, according to Chazal, and he looked around in the Beis HaMikdash. He didn't go past the Soreg. He did not go past the Soreg. And let's go back to the beginning of the story. Malachi Zu Ezra is an old man in the Bayesheni, or it was Malachi with somebody else. But whoever it was, the last Navi died, and Chachma took over. Are you with me? Meaning that this new paradigm shift, this transition, took place after the meeting of Shimon HaTzadik. At this point, Hat Aznacha Ushma Divrei Chachamim, what caused what? Unclear, but unclear to some. But what happened at this point was all of a sudden Shimon HaTzadik and Nitai Arbeli and Shmaya Vavtalyan and Yoshua ben Prachia and eventually Hillel v'Shammai. And this went on all the way until Ad Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, went on till the Chorban Beis HaMikdash. Here's a very, very important historical point that I want to make to you. This is a history which is stated in the Ramban in Parshas Balak, when he's explaining the Nevuos of Bilam. And there he says that Malchus Yavan was Katzer Ma'od. This is very important. Historically, you don't realize it because we talk about the Babylonian Empire and the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, big empires. The ganze Maisa of the Greek Empire was 60 years. That's all. 60 years. Less than the current state of Israel. 60 years was. And then Alexander the Great was killed probably, argument between his sons, who should take over until the Malchus Edom, and this is very important for you to know in history, Malchus Edom, which was then Syria, right here, Syria. Syria. Syria won the war, taking advantage of the disunity of the children of Alexander the Great and the Greek Empire. So Syria took over. At the same time, says the Ramban, they adopted Greek culture, meaning they were fine being Hellenistic. They were fine being good. They liked the math. That was good. They liked the systems. They liked the government. They did everything. It was Malchus Edom. Malchus Edom had a new feature to it that Alexander the Great did not have with Jews, and that is Hayadayim Yidei Esav. And you're going to keep this chachma of the Yevanim, and if not, we're going to kill you. That was the Edom. That was the Edomite part of it. The words of the Ramban, very moving, that when Yavan changed to Edom, it will have many, many faces, ad zman HaMoshiach. Edom, the Greek Empire itself, 60 years. But the Greek culture, 2,500 years. It's going to go and go, ad, let it be now this Chanukah, ad sheyavai Mashiach. Until Mashiach comes, so says the Ramban. And then he goes on to say, just while I'm here, V'toz haya biyad Rabbi Avraham. That's the Ebenezer. Big mistake he made that he thought that Yishmael was a Malchus. Toz biyadai. Daniel talked about these four Malchias. That's all he talked about. And the Ramban says that you can call it what you want. You could speak whatever language you want. You see, in the time of early Chazal, they were taking names like Avtalion, which was a Greek name. But you could call it what you want. You could talk whatever language you want. It's Malchus Yavan ad Hayom Hazeh. Malchus Edom? No. It's Malchus Edom, sorry, thank you. It's Malchus Edom in the culture of Yavan ad Hayom Hazeh. So the Greek culture continued. That's why to say that the Greeks, Yavanim Nikbitzu allied to Greeks, it was the Syrian Greeks. It wasn't the Greek Empire that attacked us on Chanukah. It was the Syrians that attacked us on Chanukah. It's the Syrians with Greek culture, Syrian Greeks. And these Syrian Greeks went by force until they were taken over by the Romans, by Italy, and other wars and wars and wars. And it was really, I think, not until 63 BCE that the Roman Empire became the strength in the Middle East. There was a time of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, earlier a bit with Hordus, but that they became a superpower was in 63. And that was already the time of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It was the Talmud of Hillel, who was Talmud of Shmai V'Avtalion. And I'm mixing up different pieces of history, but I'm just trying to paint a picture for you of what was going on. And ad kedei kach, that the Romans, as we know it, Tisha B'Av, not that you're talking about Chanukah, you're talking about Tisha B'Av, that they came in and they were machur the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't like any part of the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't like anything. The Yevanim themselves were the Syrian Greeks. They partzu chaimos migdalai v'timu kol hashmanim. So this is the importance of the meeting between Shimon Hatzadik and Alexander the Great, and how he was killed and his empire went on. But the Chachma of Aristotle kept on going, just with different expressions, including expressions of Edom, which is Yadayim Yidei Esav. I read something obvious but cool a few days ago, that George Washington, so he spoke with an English accent. Is that obvious? Was speaking a British accent in America, talking like an American. Obviously, there was, when you think about it, it's obvious. The transition, it was a transitionary period where it was simply the American experience was and is simply an expression of the Edom in a different accent, And it's such a good metaphor to what was going on at the time of the Bayesheni. A different accent, same language. And the culture was the same, but instead of having the British system, so we did the Americans did new with Constitution but took most of it from Britain. They took a parliament, turned it into a Congress and a Senate. Senate is a Greek idea. So it goes, everything goes around, and Yavon becomes Edom, and Jews are Jews, period. Jews are Jews. So Yafta Lakim Liefes Yishkem Ba'alei Shem. Just another moment of placement in history, that the Greeks, the original Greek Empire, was accepted. But then they went further and further and further to break the lattice, which is a very weak wall, between Chachmas Yisrael and Chachmas HaYavanim. It wasn't only about taxes. It was about Timukol Hashmanim. Because Antiochus, this is talking about 160 years later approximately, after Shimon Hatzadik, Antiochus was a Syrian Greek, came into the Beis HaMikdash. He was probably the one who was Partzuch HaMos Migdalai. He was the one who was Timukol Hashmanim, and he gave rise to the Chashmonaim in our Chanukah story. Because at this point of Antiochus, the Chashmonaim said, okay, like Greek is Greek and Chachmas Yavanim is Chachmas Yavanim, and we will even teach math in our schools. But Ad Kan, Timukol Hashmanim, Ad Kan physically, don't go past the Sorek. Ad Kan, that you're taking over Klal Yisrael. So whereas Alexander the Great bowed down to Shimon Hatzadik because he recognized the spiritual aspect of Nevuah, the ultimate Romans were Machar of the Beis HaMikdash. The Chashmonaim came 200 years before the Churban Beis HaMikdash. I imagine it was the time of Nitaya or Biylai. I imagine those were the Tanoim at that time, maybe Yoshua ben Prachia. They came and they didn't want to, they weren't dreaming about Shimon Hatzadik. What the Chashmonaim were dealing with people that wanted to take over the whole thing. We don't want any menorah there at all. And that's when the Chashmonaim went to war with them. Yes? Meaning the Greeks turned into Syrians, got out of hand, started to invade and take over and eventually destroy Timukol Hashmanim, any kind of spirituality of shame, any spirituality of Klal Yisrael, all the limud of the, it started off innocent. Okay, can you translate the Torah for us? 70 Zakanim, Septuagint, the Greek word. Can you translate the Torah? It started off somewhat innocent. Chazal didn't like it. We make a fast day about that. But they did it. We did it. Okay, let's cooperate. They want to understand Torah. They want to understand the words. It got to the point where Timukol Hashmanim, and came the Chashmonaim and fought against them. War, physical war. Back off, guys. You've knocked off. They put together the soreg again, or they put a geder on the soreg. And they said, listen, we're not going to, and here's where I'll end because the time is up. We're not going to build like a Palestinian Jewish, we're not going to build a barrier over here. We're going to put a geder. And the geder, the soreg is there, the geder is here. But when you get to that geder, what's the geder? The geder is Ad Kan, Chachmas Yavanis, and Mikan ve'elach Kedushas Hashem, Kedushas HaTorah. You can't go any further than this geder. And this is what we want you to do. Gazru, they made Xeris, as the Mishnah said, whenever you pass one of these psachim, one of these protzos that the Greeks made, I want you on the floor and understanding what is Hashem. You know what it means when Pishut Yadayim V'Raglayim? It's total bittul of yourself. And I'll just end with this. Yeah. That was the bowing of Alexander. There was a bittul. So Alexander the Great, and this is why I named my son Alexander, you see, because he was able to, not really he was named after Yisrael, but he was named Alexander. But what's fascinating here is that, are you willing, what happens at the gateway? What happens at the gateway between the world and the Harabayis? We say Ad Kan. Not only we say Ad Kan, but we do a complete bittul hayesh to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Pishut yadayim v'raglayim. If you took a walking tour of the Beis Hamikdash, 13 times you went up and down and up and down. Pishut yadayim v'raglayim. And when you got to stay down there, like we do Yom Kippur, Nachmer, even more. Pishut yadayim v'raglayim. This is the Kabbalah, the final Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shamayim, that the Chashmonoim, the Tzadikim, were legislated. That our movement, if you want to understand the Chashmonoim movement, let's call it Ad Kan, Chanu, Chanu. I speak Ganuk. That's as far as you're going to go. And then at this place we do complete Ishtachavoyah. Now, just tell you something that every time we bow down, like Baruch Atah Hashem by Shmona Esrei, so what's happening there is as follows. Just leave you with this little idea that your head is the head of. That's where everything's supposed to be coming from. Like we're not supposed to be doing things without using our head. We're not supposed to be touching things or moving things or hitting people or anything. So the head, al pi Kabbalah, always, it's not just naturally the highest part of the body, but it's always supposed to be the highest part of the body. The Chidai writes that when you sleep, you're not allowed to sleep without a pillow because your head has to be risen above the rest of your body all the time. Like the head should always be above the rest of your body. Unless you do these total inversions in a yoga class or something, keep your head, that's completely upside down. But it's not natural to be standing on your head. I don't care what anybody says. It doesn't work. The natural thing is your head always has to be on top of the body, except when you're mishtachvet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means to say that I'm taking the most important part of my bria and I'm lowering it before Hashem. Whether we do it a little bit like we do it today, whether we do it a lot like we do on Yom Kippur, whether we do Pishut Yadayim V'Raglayim in the Beis Hamikdash, Be'ezus Hashem, that's a complete bittul of Einoid Milvadai that we can't lose, which was the force of the Chashmonoim, which made the Beis Hamikdash last another 200 years until the Romans beat us because of our own sinas chinam. Okay, well, next talk will be Tisha B'Av. Mir Hashem should be a yontif.